This is live from New Delhi. You're watching TT India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and coming up in the next hour, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi returns home from Laos PDR, terms his visit as productive and in line with India's commitment to keep strengthening relations with ASEAN. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken expresses concerns at ASEAN meeting over China's dangerous actions in disputed sea, says ASEAN is central to a free and prosperous Southeast Asia. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Washington was dedicated to diplomacy to control situation in West Asia. Meanwhile, UN chief calls for avoiding all-out war in Lebanon. Russian President Vladimir Putin holds talks with Iranian President in Turkmenistan, says relation with Iran a priority for Russia. And Maha Navami, the penultimate day before Dussehra festival being celebrated across India and different parts of the world. Auspicious day dedicated to worshipping Goddess Durga, symbolizes the victory of good over evil. Prime Minister Narendra Modi returned to New Delhi after a two-day successful visit to Laos PDR. Prime Minister Modi attended the 19th East Asia Summit in Vientiane. He has termed his visit as productive, in line with India's commitment to keep strengthening relations with ASEAN. Prime Minister Modi underlined that India's participation in East Asia Summit was an important pillar to its Act East policy. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the 19th East Asia Summit in Vientiane in Laos today. During his address, Prime Minister Modi extended condolences to the countries who have been impacted by Typhoon Yagi. Prime Minister Modi noted India's assistance in providing humanitarian aid through Operation Sadbhav. Prime Minister Modi emphasized on ASEAN unity and centrality, reiterating India's interest in peace, security and stability of the South China Sea. Prime Minister called for free, open, inclusive and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Prime Minister Modi said that maritime activities should be conducted under the UN Convention Law of the Seas. He noted that focus should be on development, not expansionism. He also said India's support for ASEAN approach on the situation in Myanmar, adding that countries of Global South are facing most negative impact of ongoing conflicts. Prime Minister called for peace and stability to be restored as soon as possible and said that this is not the era of war, reiterating that problems cannot be solved in the battlefield. Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Thongloun Sisoulith, the General Secretary of the Central Committee of Lao People's Revolutionary Party and President of the Lao PDR in Vientiane on Friday. Prime Minister congratulated President Sisoulith for successfully hosting the ASEAN Summit and the East Asia Summit. The two leaders discussed bilateral ties and reaffirmed their commitment to further strengthen the close partnership. They noted that India-Lao contemporary partnership was deeply rooted in age-old civilizational bonds. Both leaders expressed satisfaction at the ongoing collaboration between the two countries in the fields of development partnership, heritage restoration and cultural exchanges. Highlighting that 2024 marks a decade of India's Act East policy, Prime Minister Modi noted its salience in adding further momentum to India's engagement with Laos. The two leaders also discussed regional and global issues of mutual interest. Prime Minister Modi also held bilateral talks with the Prime Minister of Laos PDR. He also congratulated Laotian Prime Minister on successfully hosting the 21st ASEAN India and 19th East Asia Summit. The two Prime Ministers held productive discussions on further strengthening India-Laos civilizational and contemporary ties. They discussed various areas of multilateral cooperation such as development partnership, capacity building, disaster management, renewable energy, heritage restoration, economic ties, defense collaboration, among others. Prime Minister of Laos PDR thanked Prime Minister for India's food relief assistance provided to the Laos PDR in the aftermath of Typhoon Yagi. The two leaders noted that the ongoing restoration and conservation of Wat Phu, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, under the Indian assistance by the Archaeological Survey of India, imparts a special dimension to multilateral ties and bilateral ties. Prime Minister Sifandon reaffirmed India's role on the international stage, that India has strongly supported Laos PDR's chairmanship of ASEAN for 2024. Also following the talks, MOUs, agreement in the fields of defense, broadcasting, custom cooperation and 3 quick impact projects under the Mekong-Ganga cooperation were exchanged in the presence of two leaders. The quick impact projects relate to preservation of heritage of Lao Ramayan, restoration of Wat Piki Buddhist temple, with murals related to Ramayana and support to shadow puppetry theatre on Ramayan in Champasak province. All 3 QIPs have the Government of India grant assistance of about $50,000 each. India will also provide a grant assistance of about $1 million to improve the nutrition security in Laos PDR. MOU was also signed on cooperation of broadcasting between Lao National Television, Ministry of Information, Culture and Tourism of Laos PDR and Prasar Bharati of India. Indian Prime Minister Modi also met Prime Minister of Thailand Paetongtarn Shinawatra in Laos PDR. In a post on platform X, Prime Minister Modi said Thailand is deeply valued friend of India, adding that talks between the leaders were focused on how to improve trade ties between our nations and to boost cultural linkages. Prime Minister Modi said India and Thailand see great scope in sectors like defense, shipping, digital innovation and more. Ambassador of India to ASEAN spoke to DD India on Prime Minister Modi's 2-day visit and its outcomes. He also highlighted various factors that saw prominence in this particular edition of ASEAN and how tourism surge is also an integral part from the ASEAN and Prime Minister Modi's 10-point proposal to engage even strongly with the ASEAN nations.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just concluded his visit to Laos PDR for the 21st India-ASEAN Summit and the East Asia Summit. And to talk more on this and to talk more on how the visit has been, we are joined in by Ambassador Jayant, who is the Ambassador of India to the ASEAN. Thank you so much, sir, for talking to DD India. First, what we see is how significant do you think this visit was in terms of that Prime Minister Narendra Modi encapsulated various sectors in his interventions at both the summits?
Yeah. See, of course, this region is very important, and Honorable Prime Minister India has given utmost importance to this region. He has, this time it was his 11th summit, and like last year you would recall that, we were the host for the G20 and East Asia and ASEAN India Summit was happening on 7 September in Jakarta, but Honorable Prime Minister made it a point to go to Jakarta, attended, the summits, came back to India and started receiving the guests, so that is the kind of importance. So why Honorable Prime Minister gives, this importance? First of all, we are neighboring, in a way, like we have 1,700 kilometer border with Myanmar, we have maritime boundary with a number of countries, Then our trade, for last 2 consecutive financial years, ASEAN has been second largest trading partner of India, only next to European Union. In terms of investment, mainly because of Singapore, but 20% of cumulative investment into India has come from this region and vice versa. Tourism is very important sector, like 7 out of 10 ASEAN member states are directly connected by flight. Brunei will happen this year, and then maybe, Philippines the next year. And then in terms of trade in services, another 10 to 12% of our trade happens with this. By the way, 6 million strong diaspora lives in ASEAN member states, which is around 16 to 17%. So if you look at the entire thing, so this turns out to be one of the most important regions for India. So Honorable Prime Minister coming here, talking to, the ASEAN leaders, and talking about Act East policy, which has, 4 broad pillars, etc. So it adds, it adds to deepening of our relationship with this region. And in that context, Honorable Prime Minister has given, 10-point program, for taking our comprehensive strategic partnership forward.
Prime Minister Modi also met US Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit in Vientiane in Laos on Friday. Prime Minister Modi, who was on a 2-day visit to the Southeast Asian country, extended his condolences for the loss of lives due to Hurricane Milton in Florida in US. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has reaffirmed Washington's commitment to support ASEAN's centrality during the ASEAN-US summit on Friday. Blinken also reiterated the nation's stance on supporting freedom of navigation and overflight in the Indo-Pacific and stressed the importance of maintaining stability in the Taiwan Strait.
From the deepening crisis in Myanmar, to the DPRK's destabilizing behavior, to Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, which continues to violate principles at the heart of the United Nations Charter and at the heart of ASEAN's Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. We remain concerned about China's increasingly dangerous and unlawful actions in the South and East China Seas, which have injured people, harmed vessels from ASEAN nations, and contradict commitments to peaceful resolution of disputes. The United States will continue to support freedom of navigation and freedom of overflight in the Indo-Pacific. We also believe it's important to maintain our shared commitment to protect stability across the Taiwan Strait. But whether it's responding to urgent global challenges or advancing the shared hopes of our people, the relationship between the United States and ASEAN will continue to be essential.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for ASEAN leaders to establish peace and stability in Myanmar. The UN chief was addressing the ASEAN-UN meeting on Friday in Vientiane.
Have been forced to flee their homes. And 7 years after the forced mass displacement of the Rohingya, durable solutions seem a distant reality. I support strengthened cooperation between the UN Special Envoy and the ASEAN Chair on innovative ways to promote a Myanmar-led process, including through the effective and comprehensive implementation of the ASEAN 5-point consensus and beyond. The people of Myanmar need peace, and I call on all countries to leverage their influence towards an inclusive political solution to the conflict and deliver the peaceful future that the people of Myanmar deserve.
Meanwhile, Laotian Prime Minister Sonsai Sifandon handed over the ASEAN chairmanship to Malaysian counterpart Anwar Ibrahim at Laos, as Laos wrapped up a regional summit involving the Association of Southeast Asian Nation Summits. Malaysia will assume the ASEAN chair for next year. And still to come on DD India News Hour, coming up next. Antony Blinken says US is working to prevent broader conflict in West Asia. And millions in Florida still without power after Hurricane Milton tornado left at least 16 people dead. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez meets Pope Francis at Vatican. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and now let's move on to more news and updates. Amid the escalating conflict in West Asia, intensified diplomatic efforts are on to ease the crises, calling the escalation of conflicts in the region a serious threat to global security. UN chief said that everything must be done to avoid all-out war in Lebanon. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has expressed hope for a diplomatic solution to the crises and asked Lebanese people to decide the future of their country. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes continue in Beirut. DD India's Raghav Kumar Jha reports.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Friday reiterated US support for Israel's escalated campaign against Hezbollah. Talking to reporters after attending an annual meeting of the Association of Southeast Asian Countries in Laos, Blinken said that the US is extremely focused on reaching a diplomatic solution to the war. But it is primarily up to the Lebanese people to decide the future of their country.
We believe that the best way to get there is through a diplomatic understanding, one that we've been working on for some time and one that we're extremely focused on right now. But the fundamental decisions about how that gets done, those decisions belong to the Lebanese people. Now, Israel has a right to defend itself against terror attacks coming from Hezbollah, from Hamas, from anyone else. But it's also vitally important that in doing that, they focus on making sure that civilians are protected. And again, are not being caught in a terrible crossfire.
Speaking at a press conference on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Laos, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said an escalation of conflict in the Middle East was a threat to global peace and security, and all efforts must be made to avoid all-out war in Lebanon.
We see more than 1 million displaced. We see an enormous tragedy in Lebanon, and we must do everything to avoid an all-out war in Lebanon.
UN chief also condemned Israeli attackers at a watchtower used by UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon, in which 2 people were injured.
I condemn the fact that there was shooting against the UN premise, wounding 2 peacekeepers, which is a violation of international humanitarian law. Peacekeepers must be protected by all parties of the conflict.
Israel's military chief and the head of its Shin Bet security agency held a security assessment outside southern Lebanon on Thursday and said that IDF will continue to operate against Hezbollah until safe return of tens of thousands of its residents who were forced to leave northern Israel due to rocket fire over the past year. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes hit central Beirut on Thursday and Friday as the conflict further escalated in the region. Raghav Kumar Jha's report for DD India.
In other news, Russian President Vladimir Putin has met with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian in Turkmenistan, emphasizing their countries' growing economic ties and shared views on global issues. And with tensions with Washington and the EU over the war in Ukraine, President Putin aims to strengthen relationships with nations in the global East and global South. He invited Pezeshkian to visit Russia during the upcoming BRICS summit in Kazan, which the Iranian leader accepted. This meeting underscores a broader strategy by Putin to cultivate alliances amid isolation from the West. Both leaders expressed commitment to enhancing cooperation in various sectors, reflecting a shared interest in countering Western influence. As the BRICS summit approaches, these discussions may signal a shift in geopolitical dynamics, with Iran and Russia seeking to solidify their partnerships in the face of Western pressures. The invitation for an official visit highlights a willingness to deepen bilateral relations further, impacting global alliances.
I am very glad, dear Mr. President, there is an opportunity to meet you personally and discuss our current issues. Relations with Iran are a priority for us, and they are developing very successfully. Iran has become a full member of the SCO and BRICS, and I am expecting you in Kazan this month on the 23rd, 24th at the BRICS Summit.
Our relations in the cultural, economic and social spheres are stronger and improving day by day. To this end, and taking into account the will shown by the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Revolution and the belief that we have in our relation, should see them becoming stronger and improving. We have many opportunities now. We should help each other in many areas. Our viewpoints and position in the world are much closer to one each other than to those of others.
In other news, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Friday has announced €1.4 billion military aid package for Ukraine by the end of 2024, telling President Volodymyr Zelensky that it was a signal to Russia that the West would not stop supporting Kyiv. The aid will be given jointly with partner countries like Belgium, Denmark and Norway and include more air defense tanks, combat drones and artillery. Zelensky has been meeting allies in Europe this week to present a victory plan to end the war while also pressing to use long-range weapons that can strike deeper into Russian territory. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez met Pope Francis and exchanged gifts with him at the Vatican. According to the Prime Minister's office, the aim was to continue joining forces in favor of peace, urging diplomacy and dialogue rather than the military route, quote unquote. Sanchez is one of the most outspoken critics among European Union leaders of Israel's response to the Hamas attacks on 7th October 2023. Well, millions of Floridians were still without electric power on Friday, more than a day after Hurricane Milton roared across the midsection of the state, touching off tornadoes and leaving at least 16 people dead. Utility workers repaired downed power lines and damaged cell phone towers, while crews from government agencies and residents armed with chainsaws cleared downed trees and mopped up flooded neighborhoods in cities and towns swamped by Milton's heavy rains. While Milton never generated the catastrophic surge of seawater that had been feared in Florida, the cleanup operation could take weeks or months to complete. Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo has won Nobel Peace Prize. Norwegian Nobel Committee said in its citation, the group was receiving the Peace Prize for its efforts to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons and for demonstrating through witness testimony that nuclear weapons must never be used again. United Nations Rights Office welcomed the announcement, saying it recognizes the importance of grassroots organizations.
In a remarkable recognition of relentless dedication and powerful storytelling, the Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo has been awarded the 2024 Nobel Peace Prize. This group, comprising atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also known as Hibakusha, has tirelessly advocated for a nuclear-free world. Their testimonies and activism have played a crucial role in promoting global peace and disarmament.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Peace Prize for 2024 to the Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo. This grassroots movement of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also known as Hibakusha, is receiving the Peace Prize for its efforts to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons and for demonstrating through witness testimony that nuclear weapons must never be used again.
South Korean author Han Kang won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature for her intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas and exposes the fragility of human life. Han Kang, the first South Korean to win the Literature Prize, began her career in 1993 with the publication of a number of poems in the magazine Literature and Society, while her prose debut came in 1995 with the short story collection Love of Yosu.
This is a very rich and complex Han Kang was born in 1970, but she has already been a published author for more than 30 years, and her work spans so many different genres. And she writes this really intense lyrical prose that is both brutal and tender and sometimes slightly surrealistic, and very, very exciting to read, I think.
Meanwhile, United Nations said that Nobel Peace Prize is a recognition of the importance of grassroots organizations.
To us, it's a recognition of the importance of grassroots organizations, and in particular, survivors of horrific violations for their tireless and persistent work, often away from the spotlight, without much recognition, with a lot of obstacles, with not always the tremendous amount of resources at their disposal, but for them to keep going in spite of the horrors they themselves experienced, to try to make the world a better place for all of us.
The prizes for medicine, physics and chemistry were also announced. Victor Ambrose and Gary Rufkun in physiology or medicine for the discovery of microRNA and its role in post-transcriptional gene regulation. John J. Hopfield and Jeffrey E. Hinton in physics for foundational discoveries and inventions that enable machine learning with artificial neural networks. Demis Hassabis and John M. Jumper in chemistry for protein structure prediction, along with David Baker for computational protein design. The Nobel Prize for Economics will be announced on October 14th. The Nobel Prize rewards science, humanism and peace efforts. This is one of the central concepts in the will of Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel, the inventor of dynamite. The first set of Nobel Prizes was awarded in 1901. Since 1901, the Nobel Prizes have been presented to Nobel Prize laureates at ceremonies on 10 December, the anniversary of Alfred Nobel's death. Diptanshu Kashyap report for DD India.
Noel Naval Tata has been appointed as the chairman of the Tata Trust on Friday. He succeeded Ratan Tata, and the decision to pass the baton to Noel was arrived in a joint meeting held in Mumbai by trustees of various Tata trusts. He will now guide the 165 billion conglomerate at a time when the group faces several challenges globally and domestically. Meanwhile, the world continues to condole the demise of Ratan N. Tata and recalled his yeoman services not only to the Tata Group but also to the nation building. DD India's Anil Thomas gets us these details.
A day after his funeral, Ratan Tata continues to hold sway in the minds of the world. A minute's silence was observed at the launch of the Federation of European Businesses in India on Friday as a mark of respect for the great doyen of India. The event, which was rescheduled as a mark of respect, clearly highlights the role Ratan Tata played in taking an Indian company to every European country.
I join all of you in paying my respects and homage to Mr. Ratan Tata, truly compassionate human being, tall legend in industry, philanthropist beyond imagination, somebody who took India to the world, more particularly to many countries in the European Union.
Diplomats from European countries highlighted the role and respect Ratan Tata managed to get for India and the legacy he leaves behind as the true Ratna of India.
We are very sad and we mourn with his family and his friends. He was an icon of India. I had the privilege to meet him 15 years ago. I still vividly remember him, and I must say it's a great loss for India. He has been a wonderful person, a philanthropist, but also a fantastic entrepreneur. The pride of the nation, so to speak.
We pay our tribute to this legendary figure who in many ways foresaw the tremendous potential in the Indo-European relationship as he globalized brand Tata. I've had the privilege of meeting him on several occasions, and I can say with certainty that he would have been happy to see the birth of an organization like FEBI.
The board of Tata Sons has unanimously appointed Noel Tata as its new chairman following the passing of Ratan Tata on October 9th. Noel Tata, aged 67, has been deeply involved with the Tata Group, including Tata Trust, for many years. As a half-brother of the late Ratan Tata, Noel brings a wealth of experience and commitment to continue the philanthropic legacy that has long been a hallmark of the Tata Group. Noel has held leadership roles within the Tata Group for over 4 decades. He is the chairman and non-executive director of Tata International Limited and also serves as the chairman of the Tata Investment Corporation. Noel also holds the position of a trustee of the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust and Sir Ratan Tata Trust. Together, holds 66% in Tata Sons, the Tata Group's holding company. Noel has chaired Trent, the group's retail arm, for decades. He has served as vice chairman of both Titan Company and Tata Steel. Holds key position on the board of Voltas. As MD of Tata International Limited, the 67-year-old businessman played a pivotal role in expanding the company's revenues. Noel Tata is the son of Naval Tata, who also was Ratan's father. Noel Tata graduated from the Sussex University in United Kingdom. This marks a significant transition for Tata's Trust as it forges ahead under the new leadership while honoring the impactful legacy left by Ratan Tata. With inputs from Shishu Shelar in Mumbai, Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
And still to come on DD India News Hour, coming up next. Jewel theft in Bangladesh temple caught on camera. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh addresses Commanders' Conference virtually. Noel Tata has been appointed as the new chairman of the Tata Trust.
Extreme weather events are going to get more frequent and intense. What can we do? Here are some ideas.
In each of the grid, we installed rain gauges. And we identified local people from the villages, and these people were given training how to measure rainfall. And every day these farmers used to give rainfall data into a WhatsApp group that we had created called Wayanad Weather Forecast.
Sweden started very early to cut out fossil fuels from our energy mix. So that also shows that big, bold changes are possible.
There are 5 to 6 families who have joined us on this journey towards self-sufficiency. We also exchange products and goods.
If we use cork instead of these materials, which are not renewable, cork is, we are decreasing several orders of magnitude.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Butler. Now let's move on to some other big stories. In Bangladesh, a crown of Goddess Kali at the Jeshoshwari temple in Satkhira has been stolen on Thursday afternoon. The crown was gifted by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the temple in March in 2021 during his visit to Bangladesh. The information was provided by the High Commission of India in Bangladesh through a post on social media platform X. The High Commission has expressed deep concern and urged government of Bangladesh to investigate theft, recover the crown and take action against the perpetrators. Now, according to the media reports, the local police has confirmed the incident. They are reviewing the temple's CCTV footage to identify the thief. The Jeshoshwari Kali temple is one of the 51 Shakti Peeths in Hinduism. Well, needless to say, lawlessness has prevailed in Bangladesh following the fall of Sheikh Hasina's government in the country. And this case is one as an example. This is the finding of a report by Rights and Risk Analysis Group. The group in its report titled Conflicts in Bangladesh and Myanmar, the Threat to Regional Peace and Security, has some observations that on 6th of October, the interim government in Bangladesh appointed members of 6 committees. Not a single member was part of this from 1.6 million indigenous peoples and 16 million religious minorities. None of them were included in any of these committees, including the Constitution Reform Committee.
6th of October, he formed this Constitutional Reform Commission. And Constitutional Reform Commission has only 9 members, and out of 9 members there is only 1 woman, and there are no indigenous peoples. The population of the indigenous peoples is about 1.6 million, and there are no representation from the religious minorities, who are about 16 million.
Now, Bangladesh's interim government led by Muhammad Yunus, or Dr. Muhammad Yunus, was formed on 8th of August 2024 following the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on 5th of August 2024 amid nationwide protest and public protest against the government. The interim government has announced the formation of a 9-member commission to review and evaluate the country's constitution and also recommend necessary reforms. Now, under the leadership of prominent Bangladeshi American professor Ali Riaz, the Constitution Reform Commission has to submit its report to the government within, or the interim government within 90 days. The commission was formed to review and evaluate the existing constitution to establish a representative and effective democracy while empowering the people. Now, members of the commission include student representative Mahfuz Alam as well. A report released by India-based think tank Rights and Risk Analysis Groups have raised some red flags or concerns on the composition and commission. It says that not a single member from 1.6 million religious minorities have been included in this commission. These are the excerpts of the report released by Rights and Risk Analysis Group. No representation from the indigenous or religious minorities have been included in the Constitution Reform Committee. And exclusion is, it says, is absolute and unseen under President Irshad or Khaleda Zia or Sheikh Hasina's regime, that such exclusions have not been seen in earlier regimes as well. And exclusion of these indigenous people from current reform process doesn't augur well with the democracy. And Constitution Reform Commission also excludes hill tribes. The report raises serious concerns on the situation of minorities in Bangladesh. It says it's threat to regional peace and security. That's a big red flag this think tank has raised. And it's also talked about the unrest in Bangladesh and Myanmar can deeply impact peace in Indian subcontinent region, where interim government's intent to resolve the issue of Chittagong Hill is also under doubt or scanner. Tribes and other minorities are relying on elections to resolve their concerns, but when are these elections going to take place? And exclusion of these indigenous people from reform process can also lead to future conflicts. This is what the report has also said. It talks about the intensification of human rights violations under the current regime in Chittagong Hill, current regime, that interim government. From September 19 to October 1st, illegal planes and settlers and Bangladesh army led organized assaults on the indigenous people. That's a big claim in this particular report. It also talks about these assaults were carried out in these regions, particularly Diganala, Khargachari and Rangamati regions. It seeks investigation by the UNHRC to United Nations Human Rights Committee to conduct investigations on the plight of minorities there. And I'm going to quickly welcome my guests joining us on this broadcast. We have... Yes, we are joined by Director of the Rights and Risk Analysis Group, Suhas Chakma on this broadcast. He's also the member of the National Human Rights Commission, one of the core members of the National Human Rights Commission, the report which has raised these red flags on the composition and the intent of the commission. Thank you very much, sir, for joining, and also glad to welcome Ambassador Veena Sikri, former envoy to Bangladesh. Thank you very much, ma'am. I'm going to quickly start with Suhas. What are the basis of these key findings of your report? It, in a big way rather, exposes the exclusionist agenda or the approach of Muhammad Yunus's interim government.
Well, I mean, the findings are based on actual incidents which have taken place.
Okay.
And these are recognized by the government of Bangladesh. And these are reports which are published by the local organizations. We are also verified by us. So that's, I think, as far as the findings on human rights violations which took place from 19th September to 1st October are concerned. The second issue is, of course, notification on the constitution of this reform commission that has been notified, and there are no Hindu minorities or the hill tribes representative. And I think at certain stage in the country, people expected Yunus to be different from the rest because he is not a politician. And his aim is to conduct election, establish peace. Then even if he undertakes reform, as a Nobel laureate, he is actually supposed to take everybody on board. And obviously, he is not following the agenda of, I would say, even the right-wing BNP. Forget about the Army League. He is actually following the agenda of the Jamaati Islami and the more hardline groups. So I think it's a very dangerous trend. I think international community is under the impression that the Nobel laureate is liberal, he is inclusive. He is not liberal, he is illiberal, and he is excluding the most vulnerable people, not only the hill tribes and the religious minorities, even the women. I mean, if you include only one woman out of 9 members, it's absolutely uncalled for. And that's not something I think Yunus can sell and convince anybody in the world.
Well, inclusive and peace-loving and liberal is that's something which is not visible as the findings of these reports, Ambassador Sikri, is concerned. By the way, we would like to tell our viewers Ambassador Sikri was also present at the briefing of the diplomats that took place in Delhi on the conflicts in Bangladesh and Myanmar. Ma'am, your observations. It actually raises, larger questions on the way the interim government proposes to further be, well, they're talking about the inclusive democracy, but if one has to believe the findings of the report, it is anything but inclusive. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think there are 2 very distinct aspects of the issues raised in the report that Mr. Chakma has just spoken about. First is the troubles being faced by the minorities, the violence, the killing, the lootings, destruction of property, a denial of economic livelihood, forced to resign from jobs. All this has been happening to the minorities, the Hindus, the Buddhists, and the Sikhs from the 5th of August onwards, and has been taken up at a very strong level by the government of India, including with the chief advisor of the interim government, Professor Muhammad Yunus, including even with Professor Joe Biden, and including with many other people. And despite all the assurances, the difficulties are continuing. We've seen that in Khagrachari, the violence which took place, the people there said that the army was with the people who were committing the violence. That was one thing they said. Then on the Hindu community, the Durga Puja festival is going on right now. But there have been attacks on Durga Puja pandals, and there have been difficulties in them going into the celebration of the Durga Puja. Despite the fact that the Jamaat-e Islami says that we are protecting your Durga Puja pandals, we have seen the report today, as you have just reported, that from one of the most important temples of one of the Shakti Peeths.
Exactly.
In Yeshweshwari temple in Satkira, the very precious mukut, the crown of the goddess Durga, that was goddess Kali, that was placed by Prime Minister Modi in March of 2021. That crown has disappeared. It has been stolen, and the Indian embassy has protested against it. So this is going on in the Durga Puja celebrations. And despite all the assurances.
Ma'am, if you look at the CCTV footage, I mean, this man who can be clearly, can we play those visuals again, please, of the theft? You can clearly identify this person in the CCTV footage, and he walks in very normally, picks up the crown, walks out, and I mean, this I think is reflective of the lawlessness that prevails in the country. Is that so simple? He walks in and walks out with the crown.
It is very much that, and I think the second aspect, so this is one aspect. The second aspect is what has been raised about the constitutional reform proposal. Now that again is very surprising because two things have happened here. One is that the government itself is saying, the interim government, that we must have reforms before elections. Normally an interim government, such as was previously in the Bangladesh constitution, would be there just for 90 days and would organize elections in those times. And it's the elected body who would conduct whatever reforms that they felt were necessary.
That was my next question going to be. Suhas ji, what is this talk about reforms without elections? I mean, is interim government constitutionally empowered enough to talk about these reforms, which, by the way, as per your report, are very lopsided? I mean, if you have put in a 9-member committee, it has to have a representation from all stakeholders, at least.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you have to include all different sections of the society, and they are not including them. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is the current government does know on what legal footing it is operating on, because the constitution of Bangladesh, which is operating at this point of time, is not or does not allow an interim government. That's one part. The second part is the constitution itself has not been suspended. So it means the constitution is in operation. And if the constitution is in operation, at the end of the day, you have to be empowered by the constitution to do something. So in a way, it indicates absolute lawlessness in the country. And Muhammad Yunus, without being elected, is actually conducting all activities except governance. So that is in a way to ensure that he stays in power beyond 3 months or beyond 6 months, because once you undertake the reform process, it's not going to be completed in 3 months' time. Then more unfortunate parties, then you hold elections.
Okay.
And there will be a new government. The election, the new government which comes to power might say, this is rubbish, we just throw it out. So why have you spent so much time on this? Because a new government elected by the party of people has no obligation whatsoever to accept the dictate of Muhammad Yunus. So we have to understand this whole exercise of reform, the 6 reforms which he is talking or he has undertaken, these are means to stay in power and buy enough time so that he can form a political party of his own and ensure that nobody can enjoy the power and he stays in power, till the next election, whenever he wants to do.
Okay, if that is the game plan, allegedly, Ambassador Sikri, but this is a larger question about the credibility, and Mr. Suhas's think tank's report has clearly sought the intervention of the UNHRC.
Absolutely, because, in addition to the fact that the interim government has set up a constitutional reform committee, which is not at all inclusive, which is headed by a professor who is actually based in the United States. It also has journalists on it, but I do not see any constitutional experts on it. In addition to that, I must tell you that one of the parties, the Jamaat-e-Islami, who actually is the real power behind the throne right now, and who seems to be wielding enormous power throughout Bangladesh, and in terms of it is their people who are getting all the appointments, it's their people who are getting all the university jobs and so on. This Jamaat-e-Islami, their Amir made an announcement just 2 days ago, they came up with their own state reform proposal, where they proposed a constitution of their own, and they have, in that press conference, the Amir says that the 1972 constitution of Bangladesh was made in India. Like he completely denigrating it if we don't accept that constitution.
Okay.
Now we must say that constitution was made by the best constitutional experts of Bangladesh.
Okay.
Kamal Hussain, Barrister Amir Islam and others. So now he's given his own constitution proposal which has no authority.
Right, ma'am. Yes. Ma'am, one last question. Yes, I'm sorry we're really running short of time, but Suhas ji, so the larger question is this, are we looking at a larger clout of Islamists who are calling the shot behind Yunus? And if that is the case, it is a matter of serious concern, because Jamaat at the end of the day cannot really have a free walk like this. Then why are they talking about democracy?
Well, I think, yesterday one of the panelists in another discussion with Madam Sikri was saying Jamaat is actually softer version. He is being advised by organizations which are Islamist, which was, I forgot the name. It was banned by the government of India yesterday. So I think Bangladesh is heading towards not Islamist, but hardline Islamist state. And that's the fear. And that's why I think the government of Bangladesh, the Yunus government, interim government, is not allowing Tariq Jia to return to Bangladesh, because even BNP is seen as a liberal party by Yunus and his advisors.
All right, I think it's a larger question about the credibility and the authenticity or the intentions of the so-called interim government in place, because they are at the end of the day talking about reforms and inclusive democracy. If one has to go by the findings of your report, that's a big question. There's a big question on these claims made by the interim government. Meanwhile, thank you very much, Ambassador Sikri. Such a pleasure as always. And thank you, Mr. Suhas Chakma, director of the think tank which has published this report. Thank you, both of you. And now let's quickly move on to some other stories also on in Newshour. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has addressed the 2nd Army Commanders Conference in a virtual mode from Army location at Sukna. The Defence Minister reasserted the faith of entire nation in the Indian Army as one of the most trusted and inspiring organizations in the country. He highlighted the significant role being played by the Army in guarding our borders and fighting terrorism, apart from providing assistance to the civil administration in every need of the hour. The 2nd Army Commanders Conference of the year 2024 had commenced in a hybrid format on 10th of October 2024 in a forward location at Gangtok in Sikkim. India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh also inaugurated the renovated Prerna Sthal in Gangtok, Sikkim. The Defence Minister said that the construction of this Prerna Sthal has immortalized the sacrifice of our brave soldiers who laid down their lives to protect the nation. Nominations filing for the general elections in neighbouring Sri Lanka has concluded across the island on Friday. Total 690 nominations from recognised political parties and independent groups were accepted. Sri Lanka's Election Commission rejected 74 nomination papers due to various reasons. Meanwhile, nomination of total 46 contestants have been approved from the Colombo district, which includes Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarsurya. The parliamentary polls in the island is scheduled for 14 November, in which 196 members will be elected from 22 electoral districts and 29 members will be nominated through the national list. The EU-India relations have been on an ascending trajectory with a growing economic footprint. The Federation of European Business in India was launched to increase the footprints of the entire EU region, which includes 27 member states. So will the scale between value and volume increase and help in India-EU trade? DD India's Anil Thomas gets us more.
This is a new beginning for the Federation of European Business in India, or FEBI. The EU has a footprint in India with over 4,500 companies, providing 6.5 million direct and indirect jobs. This launch marks a significant milestone in its new journey.
Today is the day of Durga, who is considered the goddess of power also, the goddess who fights against evil. So I think it's most appropriate that FEBI is being launched on this auspicious day.
It is our time. It is the time for India and Europe to become even closer together. And as the collective voice of European business, FEBI's mission is to harness the true potential of this dynamic relationship to the mutual benefit of India and Europe.
The EU is India's largest trading partner in goods, with trade amounting to 123 billion euros in 22-23 and ranks among the top 3 investors in India.
The fact that the EU proposed to India to establish a Trade and Technology Council, this is the only second TTC that we have, the other one being with the US, speaks for itself of the mutual interest and benefits.
FEBI will maintain close and constructive relations with Indian and European authorities. Swedish company came on board as the 100th member company of FEBI.
We're over 280 Swedish companies present in India, and we're growing with more than 1.5 companies a month are coming and establishing themselves here in India. So we're very proud to become a member as well. I mean, the 100th member is just an amazing honor.
For us, FEBI is going to be a game changer, very, very important for our companies to have a platform to engage with the government of India. And I think, you know, in a country like India, of course, businesses will always do business, but it's very important to have an opportunity to engage on the bigger strategic issues.
It is in a time when India looks at Europe with much more interest and sees Europe as a much bigger trade partner than before. I think it's a very important event that we launched this network.
The growth potential between India and European countries is immense. There are 27 member countries, and India holds a great potential for the footprints to grow from few states to the entire length and breadth of the country. Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
Well, thousands of Hindu devotees in several parts of India thronged temples on Friday to offer prayers and mark the last day of the 9-day festivities dedicated to Indian goddess Durga. During this festival, devotees often visit a series of neighborhoods to see large idols, and these idols that are put up in big tents and other makeshift structures. Well, that's it for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.